So I want to talk about three different Packers players that I believe will break out in the 2024 season. And every single year we see guys who, take a huge step forward from their previous season. Lots of times it's guys who are maybe rookies or even second-year players who just with more experience, more understanding of the game, more, time in the NFL, they just naturally take that next step. They get more opportunities, and we see players who maybe early in their career didn't show a ton, end up panning out and playing really well. Some examples that we've seen in the past, Davante Adams, his first couple of years, he, was not the type of receiver he is that we see today. And it wasn't until his third or fourth season, probably third season, where he really, took that next leap. Same thing with Rashawn Gary, who in his first year, if you just would have taken that year, you would not have been able to, predict, what he became just looking at his on-field performance at that time. And so the first player that I think will break out is Devonte Wyatt. And if we look at his first 2 years in Green Bay, he did take a jump from his year 1 to year 2. So he broke out a little bit to an extent, but I think there's even more he can do. In his first season in Green Bay, he played in 224 snaps, basically doubled that in 2023, playing 552 snaps. He went from 8 pressures to 45 pressures and 2 sacks to 7 sacks per PFF. And so he already did take a big step forward in his second season. But I think that with this new Jeff Hafley defense, and from all that I've read about the way that they're shifting how this defensive line plays, instead of having to, focus on 2 gaps, they can just sort of attack 1 gap right away. And because Devonte Wyatt, his best attribute is his pass rushing ability, it sounds to me like with his ability to now in this defense not have to, navigate 2 gaps and just his ability to fly through 1 hole, I think that we're going to see even more production when it comes to his pass rushing ability. And the one area of his game that he needs to improve on, specifically from last year, was his missed tackles. In his first season, he had a 7.1% missed tackle rate. In 2023, he had a 28.9% missed tackle rate. So there's no doubt he would have had a ton more sacks if he would have been able to, finish some of those tackles, because there were many times last year where he gets in the backfield, looks like he's about to sack the quarterback, but then the quarterback's able to, maneuver around and he ends up, missing with his arms. And so if he can clean that up as well, I think that we're going to see even more production coming into his third season, so I'm excited to see what he can do. Now, the next guy is Lucas Van Ness, Packers first-round pick last year in 2023, number 13 overall, and he was drafted really young. He's still 22 years old. He'll be 23. Actually, he's going to be 23 starting the season, turning 23 on July 6th. I'm not sure which day I'm putting out this video, but on July 6th, he turns 23. And so looking at his first year, he played in 366 snaps. He had 18 pressures and 5 sacks. And so just like with Rashawn Gary from his first year to second year, we saw him get more opportunity, get more pressures, get more sacks. I think we're going to see the same from Lucas Van Ness, because Lucas Van Ness, he had some nice plays last year. He's a pretty, solid player. And just with his size, his speed, his physicality, 6'5", 272 pounds, and he moves, so incredibly quick. I think he's going to get more and more opportunity. As Preston Smith gets older, Preston Smith is still playing really good at this time. I think eventually we'll see, Van Ness take over for Smith in the coming years. But I think just the natural progression going from his first season to second season, I think that Lucas Van Ness is going to, come through and produce at a much higher level going into year 2, and he'll probably get, more opportunity, more snaps in his second season. Now, the final guy I want to talk about, and is also on this defensive line, so I think the D-line is going to have a much better year this year, is sixth rounder from last year, Karl Brooks. So he fell pretty far in the draft, partly because of where he went to college, Bowling Green. I think there was this belief that maybe because he was in a lesser conference, maybe it wouldn't translate to the NFL. But he honestly played pretty good last year in his first season. 379 snaps, had 25 total pressures, and 4 sacks per PFF. And, I think for most first-year players, you see them, lots of guys, take that natural step into year 2. And so I think that with more experience, and as I already mentioned before, the switch up in defensive philosophy, I think that, honestly, overall, we're going to see lots of these defensive linemen produce at a higher level, especially when it comes to the pass rush, because when they're just getting to fly off the ball and not having to think quite as much, which sounds like Jeff Hafley wants them to do, not giving them, or basically Jeff Hafley explains things really well, makes things simple for these players so they can just play fast and quick. And I think that's going to translate to a lot more success on the defensive line and these, defensive ends, edge rushers, because they're going to be able to just, pin their ears back and fly through. So the third guy I have is Karl Brooks. But feel free to let me know who you think could break out in 2024. I think on the offensive side, because the Packers had so many young players playing a ton of snaps last year, lots of those guys already broke out to some extent in their first year. But I definitely could see guys like Jayden Reed improving, Dontavian Wicks. I already talked about Luke Musgrave in the past couple of days. So there are some other guys who could break out in 2024. But those are my thoughts. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.